Welcome everyone to today's webinar for MTM Critical Minerals, ASX code MTM. Shortly, I'll introduce CEO Michael Walshe, who will provide an update on the latest developments of the company's innovative Flash Joule Heating technology for the efficient extraction of critical minerals from e-waste, in addition to the outcome of its recent capital raising activity. At the completion of the short presentation, Michael will also be on hand to answer any questions you may have, which can be submitted via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. At that time, I'll also introduce the Head of US Operations for MTM, Steve Regel. So during the presentation, think of what questions you may have, submit them, and I'll put them to Michael and Steve at the end of the presentation. Right, now let's get into it. I'd now like to introduce MTM Critical Minerals CEO, Michael Walshe. Michael, over to you.
Thanks, David. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for attending this webinar. So MTM, we've recently completed an $8 million capital raise, and now we're fully funded to execute our own destiny going forward. Next slide, please. So we are now in the process of commercializing the Flash Joule Heating technology. And what this technology is basically an innovation in metal recovery and mineral processing that is from the brain of Dr. James Tour from Rice University. And what it allows us to do is efficiently extract minerals from both waste streams like bauxite residue, semiconductor scrap, and high-value e-waste, and also try and improve the processing of problematic minerals like spodumene from lithium processing and also rare earth processing. And we're heavily focused now on the commercialization. We're actively designing our 1 ton per day unit, which is essentially 1,000 times scale up from where the technology had its humble beginnings in Rice University. And we hope to have that plant operational by this time next year. Next slide, please. And this was covered quite extensively in the last webinar, but fundamentally what we're trying to do is improve how metals are recovered, currently using the traditional techniques like pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy, and also improve refractory mineral processing. And we pretty much have the whole periodic table at our disposal. And but because of our, I suppose, constraints, we're currently focused on high value metals like the recovery of gold, copper, tin, palladium from printed circuit boards, which are typically an order of magnitude higher in content, in metal content compared to mineral ores. And we're also heavily focused on gallium extraction and indium extraction from semiconductor scrap, which are both probably one of the most highly valuable metals on the periodic table right now. Next slide, please. So an overview of the technology, Flash Joule Heating. As I mentioned, this was covered in the last webinar, but I'll briefly go over here again. Next slide, please. It's basically a patented ultra-fast heating method that we can do in a controlled chemistry environment. And we essentially have a very elegant solution where we can distill off the target metal of interest that we're looking for and leave behind the unwanted material, which is what the current technologies like pyrometallurgy and hydrometallurgy can't do. But from a high level perspective, they're non-selective. We are very selective. We can distill off what we're looking for and leave the unwanted stuff behind. And it's an electrically heated solution, so we can use solar energy, renewable energy, small scale nuclear, whatever as required, unlike the traditional pyrometallurgical techniques, which are done using predominantly fossil fuels. Next slide, please. And we've got 2 business units that are going to underpin the business. So we're going after industrial waste streams. So high value waste such as printed circuit boards, which can contain up to 400 grams per ton gold. We're going after semiconductor scrap for obvious reasons. It contains very high valuable metals like gallium and indium. And we're also going after spent lithium ion batteries like the black mass. And the university researchers, Dr. James Tour, he's also already had success on all of these waste streams. We've already had our own success on the e-waste ourselves. And then the second business unit is the improvement of performance of refractory mineral processing. So there are several problematic minerals in the industry. Those include spodumene from lithium pyrochlore for niobium, monazite for rare earths, etc. And these are all highly OPEX and CAPEX intensive to extract. And we've already had quite significant success with lithium, which I'll get onto shortly. And we're also soon to go after rare earths, niobium, and antimony, all high value in their own right and strategic metals. Next slide, please. Now, just a brief mention of the inventor's pedigree. So Dr. James Tour, he's a very renowned scientist in the US. He's associated not just with Rice University, but also Stanford and Harvard, and he's been nominated Scientist of the Year several times. So highly credentialed. He's already had success on the ASX with Weebit Nano. So that was also born from Dr. Tour's stable, and that was quite a market darling. It achieved over 1 billion market cap last year. So this has come from a highly credentialed team, and we hope to replicate that success that Weebit had. Next slide, please. And just where we located, so our HQ is here in West Perth, Australia, so the home of, I suppose, mining and minerals. But our primary operations are based in Houston, Texas. And our engineering partner, Nighthawk Engineering, they've been around since the early 90s. They're a very credentialed engineering outfit. Their speciality is this exact application that we have them tasked with, which is the scale up of high temperature processing. And their clients include the likes of Tesla, Chevron, etc. So they're our primary partner. We're also obviously ongoing collaboration with Rice University, and we're actively speaking to several universities here in Australia for collaboration. Next slide, please. And who, you might ask, are we trying to now emulate? So MTM began its life as an exploration company, but I suppose we're trying to re-pitch ourselves as an industrial tech company. And as you can see from this slide, our peers include the likes of Alpha HPA, Silex, Hyperion X, Talex, Amero, Titomic. So as you can see from the capitalizations, these are all highly valuable companies. And the proposition here really is to emulate that success, in particular Hyperion X, who are probably the closest in terms of our peer. And they also licensed the technology from a university in Utah, which is specifically for titanium extraction from waste. So a very analogous story. They've also got lots of ties with the Department of Energy, Department of Defense, and these are essentially the peers that we're going to try and emulate going forward. Next slide, please. And so what is our strategy to commercialize this technology? Well, I'll outline that now. So next slide, please. So essentially it's to have a leading technology in the space. And with that leading technology will allow us to form these strategic partnerships with the bigger players in the space to both provide us with feedstock and also allow us to validate the technology at a much bigger scale than where we currently are. And we've already got several discussions underway with these strategic partners in both mining, chemicals, and waste spaces. And what that will allow us to do is those will co-fund the evolution of the technology as we scale up and essentially allow us to generate licensing income and become cash flow positive quite quickly. And we hope that with our 1 ton per day demo plant, that reality will be achieved quite quickly. Next slide, please. So just on the demo plant, here's a nice artist impression of the plant, and it's aimed to finalize the design for that by the end of the year. And the multiple trucks there will just signify that we're aiming to have multiple feedstock sources that will feed this plant and allow us technology for different verticals that we're going after. Next slide, please. And with this, we're primarily focused on the high value e-waste, such as the gallium conductor scrap, which also contains indium. The high value, which contains up to 400 grams per ton gold, lots of silver, copper, tin, and also be the capability to treat a lot of success on. And the more secondary focus will be the other refractory minerals like monazite, rare earth, pyrochlore from niobium, and the antimony ore, all of which we are in the process of testing right now. And in the future, also black mass, so the recovery of valuable metals from, we hope will allow us to validate this technology for all of these different partners that we're currently speaking to, and essentially produce saleable product and fund our innovation as we go forward. Next slide, please. And here's just an indicative timeline of how we intend to commercialize. We're focused just right now on the high value e-waste. So 1 and 2 priority is the gallium indium scrap, the printed circuit board scrap, which is rich in the base and precious metals, and also the lithium opportunity. And as you can see, we're bench scale testing all of those right now, and we hope to have our piloting unit complete by Q3 next year and into commercial operations by this time next year. So lots to look forward to in the next 12 months. Next slide, please. And just on a bit on gallium and indium, most people would be probably aware, but gallium and indium are probably two of the most valuable metals on the periodic table right now. The primary reason is because of their uniqueness in their electrical properties and their use in high value technologies. So most of the chips that you're probably currently using to view this webinar right now will contain an element of gallium and indium in there. And the semiconductor technology is, I suppose, underpinned by those two metals. The Rice University guys have already demonstrated that the Flash Joule heating technology can recover gallium and indium from semiconductor scrap, which is unlike any other technology out there. And this research was funded by the Department of Defense in the US. And that's what basically that work has underpinned MTM acquiring this technology. And that research gave us confidence that the fact that Department of Defense has already invested in this gave us confidence that this technology really has merit. And we're actively focused now on achieving an offtake agreement for gallium and indium right now. Next slide, please. And we're essentially doing what we've already demonstrated we have done on the printed circuit board scrap, is essentially forming metal chlorides from the metals that we're targeting. So forming gallium chloride, indium chloride from this scrap, and essentially having a very elegant solution to leave behind the unwanted metals that are also in that scrap and only pull out the gallium and indium. And the commercial proposition here is to be in production commercially by this time next year, and also reshore gallium in the US. So I suppose most people would be aware that the geopolitical situation in the US is with the spat between US and China is declining. The tensions ongoing with Taiwan. So any, I suppose, success in this space will have major eyes on it once we can achieve it. So next slide, please. And e-waste, so electronic waste, it's I suppose most people would be aware of what a printed circuit board is, but it's where all the brains of your electronics are. And in a typical printed circuit board, there is quite a high value metal content in there: copper, gold, tin, palladium. And it's estimated that the current, based on 2022 figures, the contained metal content of the amount of waste produced is in the order of 70 billion US. So it's highly valuable material, and currently most of it goes to landfill or incinerators in third world countries. Next slide, please. And what we have recently demonstrated is we can recover these metals very elegantly, very efficiently using this Flash Joule heating technology. And we've already got recoveries of over 80% for many of the metals, including high value palladium, and over 70% for gold and silver. So this is really exciting. This was first pass proof of concept testing. And it just shows that we could have an equally compelling business opportunity for electronic printed circuit boards as gallium and indium. So both are very high value, and both are elegantly recovered using Flash Joule heating. Next slide, please. Now, with lithium, I covered this quite a lot in the last webinar, but fundamentally what we're trying to do with in the lithium space specifically at this point is address two big issues that the industry currently has. The first is the energy intensity and CO2 intensity of the traditional flow sheet. And the main reason that it's so CO2 and energy intensive is because calcination is such a high energy consumer. And currently all of the calcination is done in fossil fuel derived kilns. And up to 50% of the total energy to make a battery grade product goes into that one single step, including the mining and blasting and crushing itself. So it's a very it's an obvious target area for us. We've already demonstrated we can achieve the same calcination, the alpha to beta transformation in the technical jargon, in a fraction of the time. So significantly improving the energy dynamics of the process. The even bigger opportunity, I believe, is the ability to recover the lithium in the fines that are currently wasted. So you might typically notice that in a typical beneficiation plant, in Western Australia, often the recoveries are quoted between 60 and 70%, so very low compared to a base metal concentrator. And the reason for that is that they throw away the fine lithium particles up front because they're not recoverable in that kiln for several technical reasons. And we believe we've got the opportunity to recover those using Flash Joule Heating. Next slide, please. Now, with lithium, we've already demonstrated that we can improve calcination. So that's number one proposition. The other one is we believe we can recover these fines. That's number 3 on this slide. And then the equally exciting opportunity is that we can completely revamp the flow sheet by forming a lithium chloride product directly from spodumene concentrate. And I covered that quite extensively in the last webinar, but that's fundamentally basically changing how the flow sheet currently looks and dramatically reducing the OPEX, CAPEX, and number of steps. Next slide, please. And that just goes into a bit more detail on that lithium chloride opportunity, which was covered in the last webinar. Next slide, please. Now, with the non-dilutive funding opportunities, we've got several at our disposal. We're actively talking to both the US and Canadian federal authorities for this grant funding. And in particular, the US DOE and DOD have a combined grant that we're actively pursuing, and that's specifically for gallium, indium, and rare earth onshoring in the US. And we should hopefully hear the outcome for that in early next year. We're also looking at a lot of grants available to us in Australia around critical metals and decarbonisation technologies. Next slide, please. So just I've touched most of this already, but just a very brief look at our latest developments and test work. Next slide, please. So the recent news flow that we've generated, it's been a lot around the lithium success that we've had, turning the spodumene concentrate into lithium chloride and also improving calcination. We've also had the e-scrap covering gold, silver, platinum, tin, and palladium from printed circuit boards. And we will soon begin testing on the gallium and indium scrap that we're actively trying to source right now. So lots have been achieved in the last couple of months, and there's lots to look forward to as we go forward with all the different feedstocks that we're looking to test, also including antimony, niobium, and rare earth. Next slide, please. And so in terms of news flow, what's going to drive our, I suppose, valuation in the next couple of months? We'll be actively putting out news on our demonstration plant as we achieve this 1 ton per day ambition. And we're actively talking to all these industrial partners that we're hoping to collaborate with going forward. We've had a huge amount of inbound inquiry on the technology as I suppose the word gets out there on what it's capable of. And we'll put out anything as we can. We're obviously bound by NDAs with most of these players right now, but as soon as we can announce anything publicly, we will. And obviously, as soon as we get any of this non-dilutive funding, we will put that out there. And the beauty of the technology is relatively quick and easy to test new feedstock. So we will be having a continuous flow of news from all of the different waste streams that we're looking to test and actively testing right now, including the red mud. So red mud, the proposition there, it's one of the biggest repositories of rare earth, alumina, and titanium in the world, and there's billions of tons currently sitting in tailings. This technology has the opportunity to pull out the alumina and titanium from it, essentially recycling it. So another big opportunity that we're looking at. We'll keep putting out news on the printed circuit boards and the high value e-waste and the refractory ores as we get the data. We're currently concentrating an niobium sample that we've got from one of our partners, and we're going to soon begin testing on that niobium concentrate. So if we can achieve a breakthrough in niobium, that would be big news. We're looking to treat an niobium concentrate quite soon. We've already got a concentrate sample from an active niobium mine, and we're also in discussions with a rare earth partner that we can't mention right now due to NDAs, but that's quite exciting too. So lots to look forward to in the next 12 months, and we're going to keep the intensity of news flow as we have been over the last 2 months. So yeah, lots to look forward to. David, that pretty much covers the presentation.
Thanks, Michael. I would like to now introduce Steve, who heads up the US operations for MTM. And I think it's probably, for many of you who've never met Steve, I think it's probably a good opportunity for Steve to give a bit of background on himself and what attracted him to the MTM opportunity. So Steve, if I could just ask a little bit about your background, but also why MTM? What excites you about the company?
Thanks, David. As David mentioned, I'm Steve Regel. I'm the president of Flash Metals USA, which is MTM's subsidiary here in the United States. My background is in chemical engineering, and I've spent about 30 years in the recycling industry in different roles, including a CEO level for a number of larger companies and some private equity-backed companies as well, and have built up a number of companies from the ground up and sold them. And my area of focus right now is working with Rice University and our engineering firm, Nighthawk Engineering, and then our industrial partners that we're working on the different verticals for the different processing opportunities. And what attracted me most to MTM is the Flash Joule technology and the relationship with Rice University. It's very clear that the technology is a disruptor, and its combination of speed and energy efficiency and environmental performance. It's really going to raise the bar and move things forward on a number of metal recovery processes and technologies, including the likes of recovering metals from computer scrap and from spodumene and recovering lithium from spodumene.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And there will be a number of questions flying through, so we'll direct them as they come through. But first one, Michael, for you, what's the anticipated construction and commissioning timeline post receipt of engineering design and costs due in Q4?
Yeah, look, we hope to have all the, I suppose, the design finalized by the end of this year, including all the engineering drawings, which will allow us to then start fabrication and procurement. But fabrication and procurement will start in Q1 next year. We hope to have all of that finished and constructed by mid Q2, and then that allows us to start commissioning in Q3. And assuming all going well, we hope to be in production by Q4. So essentially, this time next year, we hope to be in commercial production on gallium, indium, and the e-waste.
And there's a question here on the DD visit. I think certainly Michael held, but maybe both of you, to Universal Matters, the company that has the 1 ton per day operating plant currently commercialized for graphene. Is there similarities there? Is what you're looking at from a pilot plant point of view straightforward? Is there a lot of off-the-shelf elements, or are you trying to create something new here for MTM?
Yeah, look, the only novelty here really is the reactor where the Flash Joule heating happens. Everything else is off the shelf, proven technology. Like the incoming feed conveyors, feed handling, size reduction. That's all, well-known off the shelf technology. Yeah, and the innovation is Flash Joule heating, and the fact that Universal Matter have already scaled the Flash Joule up to 1 ton per day for graphene gave me a lot of confidence personally that this was a worthwhile proposition, and it's not just a crazy academic idea from a university. It's got real commercial scalability. And Universal Matter, it's a private company, but it's got quite a significant chunky valuation. It's valued something like, on their last raise, I think they're valued at 400 million US. And that they've only got graphene. We've got potentially all of these metal applications, so a much, much bigger market. And if they've got that valuation, you can, I suppose, dream about what we have potentially. But yeah, we've got a much bigger market to go after than graphene.
Steve, maybe a question for you here. What's the benefits of operating in Texas? Is there unit cost of power, labor laws, US defense industry support, etc.? Is there real benefit to where the company operates?
Yes, Texas is well known as a business-friendly state and a place that it's been proven to be very positive for starting up new businesses. We have many available industrial sites with the required power capacity. There are very low taxes. On the environmental side, it's a very predictable and known permitting path and expectation of what has to occur. And then on the labor side, we have a very, very large and extensive skilled labor force, and our costs on electricity, retail electricity, and industrial electricity and labor are really they're not that expensive. So all in all, when you add it up, it's a very good place to do a startup.
It's
And
probably
maybe,
also worth mentioning that the entrepreneurial spirits like Elon Musk, he's recently relocated most of his operations to Texas because of the those business favorable conditions versus the likes of California.
and Michael, question for you. In terms of the raise successfully completed, a big number, obviously, and a much needed cash injection into the company, and really gives you the freedom to move forward with the aggressive plans you have for MTM. What does it mean in terms of people? What are the sort of people that you're looking to hire, and what will they add from a skill set point of view to the business?
Well, I suppose the main purpose of the raise was to allow us to be masters of our own destiny and not have to be beholden to any, say, grant funding or whatever. So that's the primary purpose, and that unlocks us to do that now. And from a hiring perspective, we're going to get some engineers on the ground in the US to help Steve basically with R&D and also the commercialization of the demo plant. And we've already got guys from Rice University earmarked who've already spent 6 years studying flash Joule heating, earmarked to come and join us. So we gain this huge knowledge already from existing experience, and we get these hungry entrepreneurial guys from chemical engineers from Dr. Tour's stable who are incentivized to get this to commercial production.
And a good question here in regards to the lithium opportunity. Where would you see the plants being located? Obviously, a few steps ahead. Is there an opportunity to place plants both in the US and Australia to give, given the spodumene production profile in Western Australia and the metallurgy partnership the company has with Murdoch University?
Yeah, look, I suppose we've had huge inbound from not just the current player that we're speaking to, but also their competitors. So I think the most likely one is we're going to base the plant at the US site where this particular player is going to be operating one of their existing spodumene mines. But that's not to say that we won't be able to also co-locate one here in Western Australia, where I suppose most of the world's spodumene concentrate is currently produced. And we're going to make sure that the licensing agreement is such that we're not beholden to any one party, that we're not locked into a given party for a given metal because of the agreement. So that's very high on our agenda. So short answer is we're going to locate them both in the US and Australia.
A good question here. Someone's actually picked up on the specifics of wording, if you like. What do you mean by partnership in progress as opposed to discussions underway? Am I correct in interpreting that something more advanced and very close to signatures is occurring?
Look, can't really comment on that because I suppose anyone who's ever dealt with some of these bigger players will know that it's a moving feast and they're very bureaucratic. So, but look, it's all very positive. That's all I can say. It's we've been dealing with one particular group for I think at least 4 months now at this stage, and lots of DD has already been undertaken. So yeah, that's all I can say really. We're bound by NDAs, and it would be remiss of me to say anything else.
And Steve, a question for you, and I would stress, obviously, don't forecast or give timelines that are more predictive than they need to be. But in terms of the DARPA DOE funding, is there a bit of an idea of when that potentially could come through for MTM, and particularly in relation to gallium?
Yes, the Department of Energy solicitation for proposals on their grant funding will be submitted at the end of November of this year, and announcements will be made on awards in May of 2025, and then disbursements will be 3 or 4 months after that. And there is a keen focus on gallium and indium, as well as a number of other areas that are of interest to the DOE, including the red mud processing and e-scrap processing.
A question here in terms of risks, sort of what's the key crucial step that you guys see as part of the production or part of the sort of the pilot testing phase?
Was that the key risk? Well, I suppose the key risk is getting up to scale. So 1 ton per day is the scale, and I think that's already been heavily de-risked because of universal matters. already achieving that, and it took them 6 years to get there. But I think we can rely on a lot of that expertise that's been built over that time, and the fact that we're using Nighthawk, who are very experienced in this space of high temperature scale up. So I think it's already been heavily de-risked, and it's what's given me confidence to jump on board. So I think that that probably offtakes are even a much more real risk than technology. I think the technology risk has already been quite de-risked.
Obviously a very knowledgeable group of shareholders and viewers of this webinar, because there's a question here, Michael, you have an upcoming US trip pending. What's the itinerary and what are the outcomes you're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, well, there's a very packed trip. We're presenting at the COSM conference. We're very privileged to be invited to that. We're co-presenting with Dr. James Tour. It's a sorry, I think my microphone. You can still hear me, David?
Yeah, got you. Yep.
So it's a Silicon Valley-based audience. We've got keynote speakers from the guy who founded PayPal, Peter Thiel, for example. But that's essentially allowing us to present MTM to a very, I suppose, tech-based US audience. And co-presenting with Dr. James Tour, I think, is really exciting. And also, as part of the trip, we will be visiting some of these offtake partners that we're currently speaking to. We're basically traversing the country, and we're also going to catch up with one of our peers, IperionX. They've been quite helpful so far in, I suppose, educating us as to how we navigate the DoD, DOE space, and we're trying to foster that relationship, because I suppose they're the most obvious peer that we're trying to emulate, and we're just fortunate to have a really good contact there, and be, I suppose, able to receive their vast knowledge that they've built over the past 3 years navigating this tech US DoD, DOE space. So yeah, packed trip, and there should be lots of news to come from it, we hope.
And in terms of funding, clearly non-dilutive was a key focus of the company, but you had the opportunity to take money now. Why now, and why is it so important to have this money in the bank?
Essentially, it allows us to fast track the development of this technology. It makes us masters of our own destiny. We don't have to be waiting on grant funding, which, if you're dealing with a government agency, it's normally probably triple the time that you originally get quoted to what it will take. So it just allows us to fast track the development, get this pilot plant underway, and get commercial as soon as possible, basically.
The last couple of questions just coming through. This is probably a good shareholder question that has just dropped. In terms of you're reasonably new to the company, you've done the DD, you've done the work, clearly excited by what you see. What does the future look like for you from a Flash Joule Heating perspective, and where do you think things can go over the next 6 to 12 months?
I suppose, yeah, look, what's exciting, I suppose, is being able to potentially reshore gallium or indium to the US. I mean, that's really exciting from a professional ambition type perspective, being able to reshore such a strategic metal that's used in all of this modern technology, quantum computing, etc. So that's really exciting, dealing with the Department of Defense. And I suppose, yeah, what's really motivating myself at the moment is trying to emulate the IperionX success story. And even if we can capture a fraction of that success, I think the shareholders will be happy.
And in terms of the pilot plant that you're looking to produce, is that going to be focused on one commodity, or does it have the ability to extract multiple commodities and deal with multiple feedstocks?
No, that was one of the main design parameters that we gave Nighthawk up front, is that it can handle both lithium, say spodumene concentrates, the printed circuit boards, the semiconductor scrap, so that we're not beholden to any one particular metal at a given time, because you'll know, David, that the metals fluctuate in price quite dramatically. So we think now that having a feedstock agnostic design builds a moat around the business, and as metal prices fall and wane, we can pivot to the most valuable next in our sequence. So yeah, we definitely have a big moat around the business compared to a traditional resources company, we feel, or a tech company that's solely focused on one single feedstock.
Question here. Monazite, sorry, I pronounced it incorrectly, is prominent in the Australian mineral sands assemblage. Is there more demonstration work being done in processing that in Australia or the US as opposed to sending it to the Chinese processors?
Well, yeah, look, I think I might have mentioned that we are speaking to a rare earth company, and they've got a very unique niche application that they're looking to address with the Flash Joule technology. And that essentially will, if it's successful, it will allow them to use a significantly less water, power, and reagents compared to how they're currently extracting the metal. And they actually visited our facility last week. So yeah, it's quite exciting, and it's speeding up in terms of the discussions with them. So if the test work is successful, that should also be another strategic collaboration that we can announce quite soon.
Well, that has brought to an end our Q&A. We have expired all our questions, so thanks, gents, for having a go at all of those. Quite a few questions have come through, and you've handled them all beautifully. So thanks, both of you, for participating in the Q&A.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, for attending.
And thanks, everyone, for your time to tune in and listen to the presentation, and to Michael and Steve for your presentation and participating in the Q&A. The company contact details are on the screen, and should you have any follow-up questions, please send them directly through. Have a great day, and we will see